So we're off to Wylam today, then a bite to eat, and then a nature reserve because I'm practicing what I preach and getting myself out of my environment when things get too much, and I'm taking you along for the ride. So yeah, I think I'm starting to embrace just a bit more that I don't have to put up this front of being unbreakable just because it's what I've always done. Showing weakness or struggles was never seen as a good thing. I was taught to suppress my feelings from a very young age, so I've never known any different. So this kind of vulnerability is such a big change for me, but I not only feel like it's a really important part of my healing, but a really important part of this channel as well. And, I've been in survival mode for so long now that when I left the corporate world behind after nearly dying from burnout, I really thought I had healing under control. I didn't realize just how difficult healing and recovery was going to be. Despite the fact that I was making major changes in my life and starting over and rebuilding, I was just treating it all like it was no big deal. It's just what you do. It's just part of the process. And, I thought I'd be over it all before too long because, that's how I dealt with everything else in my past. I just got over it. I've always, for lack of a better phrase, bossed my healing. But after over 2 years of working on my healing and recovery, I'm figuring out that I never bossed it at all. I was just bearing trauma, childhood trauma, adulthood trauma that caused cptsd and PTSD. I was just bearing everything. And when I left the corporate world, I, of course, brought everything with me. The overthinking, the people-pleasing, tying my self-worth to achievement, and, my perfectionism, and so much more. And I've started to I don't know why I didn't think that would happen, but I've started to realize that burnout it's just being the surface layer. Beneath the exhaustion are so many deeper layers of lifelong issues that I haven't dealt with. And I am, to a certain extent, was, at least to a certain, I don't know, still am, being leveled by chronic stress and anxiety and depression. It's much better than it was. It's nothing like when I was being hospitalized for burnout, but it's clearly still there and affecting me. I can feel it, especially when I get into that place with stress. And then I can feel the anxiety, and I can definitely have depressive days. I don't think I ever had a safe space or the time to really process anything from my past. And for some things, I honestly think my brain was protecting me from trauma I just wasn't ready to deal with. And I'm clearly learning that burnout recovery is just not a fast process any more than healing is. And, as I mentioned in my last episode, lately I've really been struggling because all this healing is taking so much longer than I thought. And yes, my timeline was very unrealistic. But some days I think it's just because it can feel way too much sometimes. And I feel like I just can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. I've had enough. And I think sometimes healing and recovery, it can feel more difficult now because I feel like it just continues to drag on. And it can be so frustrating to just still be in the thick of it. And then, of course, that unhelpfully gets me wondering way too often if I'm ever going to feel lasting peace. And that brings us back to today. So, getting out is easier said than done, for me at least. But I promised myself I would. And again, I want to practice what I preach. And in my last video, I said getting out is supposed to be really, helpful when you're in this place to just change up your environment and get some headspace. And as hard as it can be to get myself out sometimes, when I do that, I find it usually always helps. And I've noticed that I've gotten a lot better at being present and slowing down when I do get out. But of course, looking back at my footage, I'm seeing my filthy car windscreen and the glare and the shakiness and the blown out shots. And naturally, my immediate thought, because I'm me, was I can't show this. It's awful. It needs to be so much better before I can show any of this. Just once again, I'm striving for a level of perfection that doesn't exist. It's me not allowing myself to be new at something, to be new at this. I'm learning a new skill from scratch, new skills, and I'm doing this while healing and being vulnerable and telling my story. And, to give myself credit, it takes a lot of courage to do this, a lot. And I just wasn't giving myself any grace to just learn something new and be bad at it whilst I'm learning. So difficult as I find it to let go of this intense need for perfection, I am choosing to keep stepping out of my comfort zone. And rather than waiting for things to be perfect, which my brain is clearly desperate for, I'm choosing to show up exactly as I am and just, in all of life's messy reality. And this day was initially much more strictly scheduled, X amount of time here, X amount of time there. I was going to do this and that. And instead, it just all went out the window. I just let the day be in the end. Some things didn't get done because I ran out of time. But, I think I was in Wylam for 3 or 4 hours. And, I've been through Wylam so many times and I've only stopped long enough to have a bite to eat. I've always admired this place for its beauty, but never enough to actually slow down and take it in until now. So it was long overdue. And it was nice. It was a nothing day, but it was just so peaceful. Just watching the birds and the salmon jumping and the seals swimming around, which is apparently a rare sight. Seems they swam up the Tyne River for some salmon hunting, which turned into some pretty violent sushi consumption, which I inadvertently videoed, but decided not to post here. So you're welcome. But yeah, it was just nice to be in nature and just slow down and notice just the simple and mundane and very ordinary things that just go on in life every day. To just be present in that was really nice. And after a very fab meal, I headed to the nature reserve where I am now, and I stayed until dark, which was nice. Just walking along the river, listening to the clock chiming in the distance, hearing the train pass by every so often, the geese flying overhead, rabbits were scurrying around, birds, all sorts of birds flying around. I even saw a rare barn owl flying around. Nature just seems to have this gift of keeping me entirely in the moment. And being out there made me realize just how small I actually am. This was just a vast kind of open nature reserve. And yeah, and I just felt it was different than being in the woods, where you're boxed around the trees and all of this stuff, which is lovely in its own right. Yeah, this just made me realize I'm quite small in the grand scheme of things, not in a bad way or a sad way, just, quite the opposite, really. There's just something strangely comforting about remembering that I'm just one little person in this enormous world of so many living creatures. And it's not saying that what I've been through doesn't matter, what I'm going through doesn't matter, what anything anyone else has gone through or is going through doesn't matter. Recognizing our smallness in a vast world does not minimize our pain. It's just a way to reframe it, I think. It just made me feel like all this heavy stuff isn't everything. The reframe just makes things feel a little bit less impossible. Like, if the world is this big, then surely there's room for me to find my way, through all this. And it reminded me that my current struggles and what I've gone through, it's just a period in my life, a chapter of my story, not something that defines me as a whole, just something that's shaped me and is shaping me into the person I'm becoming as I heal and recover and grow and evolve and find my own way. So, letting go of perfection and the more rigid plan that day, it was just giving myself some grace and proving to myself that I can handle uncertainty and still find peace. And today just really made me feel like while I was out there, my brain was just getting a natural break from my internal worries, and I was giving my nervous system a much needed chance to reset. And, I'm learning that healing and recovery is rarely about solving every problem at once. I mean, I knew when I was out that day, I wasn't going to fix everything. But the thing is it got me out of my own head for a while, and it gave me time to breathe and to think and just remember that there's this whole world out there beyond whatever is happening inside my head. And I think that's ultimately what I needed from that day, just to step outside and breathe and take a much needed break. So yeah, I think I'm going to take that as a win. I think sometimes healing is just taking time out and remembering that there's a whole world outside of the things that hurt us, and we need to give ourselves permission to go and experience it, So if you're struggling at the moment to just remember, you don't have to fix everything today. Life is most definitely going to have its ups and downs, and we just need to learn to give ourselves space and our brain that little bit of room to breathe. And I highly recommend doing that in nature if you can. Anyway, thank you for coming along with me today. I hope that you enjoyed seeing a little bit of Wylam and the Nature Reserve in beautiful Northeast England. And I hope you found a little bit of peace here today too. Anyway, take care of yourself, take it slow, and I'll see you in the next one.